Uh.
That room doesn't look very full. Maybe we just don't have the right camera angle, right?
I think Brandon's hiding under the camera.
Well, I see Margaret and I see Will. Good morning to y'all.
Good morning.
Ooh, oh, yeah.
I'm a hot mic today.
You
These
are a
are
hot mic
these
and a
are
hot
Will
mess,
or
I
I
might
need a
add.
mic that makes us that loud.
Actually, you're coming
Well, I'm
in.
sorry you guys aren't here because I brought cookies.
Aw.
Seriously, the one time I don't come, you bring cookies?
Yeah, yeah.
Sadness.
Mhm. Well, it's Valentine's week.
Oh,
So
yeah.
are we ready to begin?
And can we turn down the mic?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I'll try not to
Little
project
verb
as
out.
much as I normally do. Well, good morning, everyone. We'll call the Forest Trust Land Advisory Committee meeting to order. And we will have introductions in the room. We'll begin in the room. How about we begin with Mike?
Good morning, Commissioner. Mike Buffo, Senior Forest Economist with Mason Bruce and Gerard.
Will, Te- Will Tucker, Lynn County Commissioner, representing Lynn, Marion, Benton, Polk, and Benton. I think I listed them all.
Did you say Lincoln?
I did, I think.
Brandon Persinger, Association of Oregon Counties and Council of Forest Trustland Counties.
Nick Wilson, State Forest Division Chief. Nick Palisato, Deputy Chief.
Justin Buttress, Policy Analyst.
Todd Heron, Information Unit Manager for State Forest.
Oh, can we go online and I can see Commissioner Lovell. Do you want to start?
Sure. Commissioner Lovell, Lane County, representing District 5. Thanks for having me.
So we'll go around. Commissioner Banks.
Courtney Bangs, Clatsop County Commissioner.
All right. How about the interim director?
Good morning, everybody. Interim State Forester Kate Skinner.
Paul?
Hi, Paul Fournier, Tillamook County Commissioner.
Joe?
Hey, good morning. Joe Offer, Recreation, Education, Interpretation Program Manager for the State Forest Division.
Is there anybody else there, Justin, online? All right. Well, I'm sorry I didn't go to the guests in the room. Oh, yeah.
Good morning, everyone. Tim Holschbach, Interim Deputy State Forester and Tillamook Room Camera Operator.
Good morning, Chet Beeling, the Assistant District Forester for Western Lane at Avenida.
Good morning, Chelsea Peters, North Cascade District Forester.
Well, thank you all for being here. So do we have some public comment? Is there anyone from the public that would like to comment?
And for those of you online, just use the raise hand feature and we'll get you in.
Madam Chair, I will just flag for the record that we did get 2 pieces of written testimony that I sent out to the members of the committee for their review before the meeting started.
Thank you.
No hands have been raised.
All right, well, then we will move on and we'll have comments from, I guess the Board of Forestry Chair isn't on here, but State Forester Skinner is on here.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. So I wanted to stop in here. I'm going to have to drop out of the meeting early, but I wanted to come over and talk about just thank you for the FTLAC comments for our forest management plan. Mike and I chatted about that earlier this week, and thanks for taking the time and getting those submitted. And I know Mike's going to talk more about the whole process, but I just, from my seat, I just wanted to express appreciation for you guys taking the time and providing those for us. The other thing I just wanted to talk about real briefly is Monday is the confirmation for Casey, our new state forester who will be coming in. So she's getting into state, will be in person for that confirmation. And she'll be meeting after that. I think she's walking the Capitol, having a lot of meetings with folks, meeting with some industry and conservation over the next couple days, and some of the ODF staff, of course, too. So it'll be a busy couple days for her, and then she'll be back March 2nd is her first official day to start. And so I've talked to Casey quite a few times, as you can imagine, and she's excited, and she's trying to finish up her job in Nevada. So she's going to get pulled a lot of directions, and I know FTLAC and commissioners will want to meet with her as well. And we're working with the governor's office on calendar invites and priorities and all those kind of pieces. So it's going to be a busy March for her, and we're trying to manage some time on those calendars. But I just wanted to let you guys know too that we'll make it a priority that she gets some time with all of you, either as this group or individually as she gets around the state. So thank you.
Turned off my microphone. Thank you, Kate, and thank you for your service during this time. We truly appreciate having had you on board and look forward to continued work with you. All right. Personnel staffing updates. Is that you, Mr. Wilson?
So I don't, good morning, Mike Wilson, State Forest Division Chief again. And I don't really have any major staffing updates beyond what Kate already provided on Casey. I guess one thing to make sure that I want everybody to be tracking, and I think we've mentioned this in a few forums. I don't know if we've talked about it much at FTLAC yet, but the State Forest Division is going to be managing the FFR program. That's the Federal Forest Restoration Program. So Good Neighbor Authority, timber sales, and other types of work. There's no real changes to what the program is doing or how it's funded or anything like that. It'll still be a combination of general fund and various federal funds that flow into that program. However, we have brought over 3 Salem employees that were into State Forest. And that's Kyle Sullivan Astor. He's the FFR coordinator, FFR program lead. And then there's Harold Stevens, who is the coordinator for FFR, field coordinator, or actually, sorry, not field coordinator. We have separate field coordinators. And we have a vacant position that's an environmental planning position, which is intended to support NEPA work. And so we are looking to get that position hired soon because we don't have the capacity to spread that throughout state forest staff. So, and for now, those folks they're starting to gel with our staff. We have them under the appropriate managers for the type of work they're doing. And right now their job doesn't change what they've been doing. Over time, we do hope to build our bench a little bit, if you will, and have some cross-pollination so that people understand both sets of work throughout the organization. There's no mixing of operating funds that are used for state forest and state forest purposes and federal forest restoration and those specific purposes. So the funding is still all separate and will continue to be so. But people's jobs, if they are partially working in the FFR space, they just code that time appropriately and so on and so forth. So it brings a little bit of perhaps long-term resiliency to staffing as well by taking this on. But the main reason for that move is, so it was located in the Forest Resources Division officially, although all of those timber sale contracts have always, they're at the field level, they're administered by FFR contract administrators, and on some districts, state forest contract administrators who code their time then to that, mostly on our Klamath Lake district. been a tremendous success down there in Klamath Lake too. And it's growing in success all over the west side as well. So anyway, with the Forest Service and the executive orders that are coming down around increasing timber production, the Forest Service is going to have some new targets. And it's not like federal forest restoration or G&A timber sales can fulfill that target. But we will, some portion of increase will come to us. So we're looking forward to seeing how that engagement works and how we can better improve some of the relationships with the various forests, because they're all a little bit different, right, across the state, and get more work done.
Wonderful. That sounds promising. Thank you. All right, now we move into, wow, we're just way ahead of our schedule even. We're good, aren't we, Will?
Well, without the troublemakers here.
Right, we keep them online and we can mute them whenever we want to. Yeah, that's very helpful. I hope they're laughing. Are they laughing, Will?
I'm expecting a cookie anytime soon here, Margaret.
Justin, is there any way we can get cookies through to? Okay, thank you. All right, so we are moving on to the Forest Management Plan rulemaking public comment.
Yes, thank you. So good morning, everyone. I'm Justin Buttress, Policy Analyst and Rules Coordinator for the State Forest Division. Today, I'm just going to be presenting a very high-level summary of the public comment that we received on the Forest Management Plan. Be focusing primarily on providing the range of comments that we received on some of the major themes, as we simply just don't have enough time to go through the entire summary, which is quite voluminous. So starting just on the process that was used, public comment was open from November 1st of 2025 through January 31st, 2026. Just in recognition of the length and the complexity of the document, that some folks are going to need some more time with it to really seek to understand that and provide their comments and develop those comments. We held an informational session to try to share information and answer questions. That was in early January, prior to the public hearings. And that was recorded and posted to YouTube as well, for those that couldn't attend live. We then also held 4 public hearings. The first one was virtual, and then the remaining 3 were held in person in Forest Grove, Tillamook, and in Eugene. A total of 78 individuals provided comment at the hearings. We also received approximately 2,700 written comments. Most of the comments were emailed, over 99%, and 89% were emails submitted through several different advocacy campaigns representing all sides of the forest management plan issues and perspectives. So all of our comments were summarized according to these 23 broad categories. You can see them here. They'll also be in the board staff report when that comes out. All comments that we received were included. We didn't do any sort of fact checking or exclude any for any reason. So, and at this stage, the department is not making any recommendations in response to the comments that we received. That'll be coming at a future board meeting, likely in June. So these categories represent the major themes of the comment that we received, as well as the legal mandate and requirements of the plan itself. Some of the comments, as you go through the summary, you'll notice they appear in multiple categories, mostly due to the interconnected nature of forest ecosystems, and just different reasons why someone might have made a comment. So for example, there were comments made to increase rotation age, and some of the reasons why were to improve recreation value, to improve visual value, improve and provide habitats, terrestrial, aquatic, and understory vegetation habitat for fungus, increase carbon sequestration, reduce wildfire risk, improve water quality and quantity, increase forest structure, increase resilience to climate change, improve forest health, reduce the use of pesticides, reduce soil compaction, and reduce disruptions to soil microbiomes. So just on one thing where somebody might say increase rotation age, there's several different reasons why. So that comment to increase rotation age may show up in several different categories as you're looking through the whole document of comparisons, summaries, excuse me. So many ways to examine those comments and draw out recommendations across the themes and perspectives. One way is to try to compare the perspectives shared by representative groups that are active participants in the conversation about forest management. So we're going to start with a subset summary that consists of comments from the Council for Forest Trust Land Counties and the member commissioners that individually or those county commissions that chose to send comments in from that Board of Commissioners. So that's all included there, as well as AOL, Associated Oregon Loggers, Hampton, Oregon Forest Industries Council, and Ferris Lumber, and then also North Coast Citizens for Watershed Protection, State Forest Coalition, Sierra Club, the Bird Alliance of Oregon, and the League of Women Voters. So that's what's represented here in these three headers: the counties, the industry groups, and the conservation organizations.
As long as Justin's fine with questions during, that's the way I prefer it, because I might forget my question otherwise.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thanks, Commissioner. So kind of a comment on this and a bit of a question, but this is interesting because it's an interesting position because you're reflecting back to us basically the county's comment to you, what you drew from that. So I'm curious on the kind of framing of, let's start with the revenue model, that the county's comment letter supports timber harvest as the main source of funding for ODF. I believe that's the law, and that the comment letter reflects the need to that in fact that timber is the main source of funding for ODF. So this is kind of framed as the counties are supporting timber at the exclusion, I think, of other possible revenue sources. Sort of the way the conservation organizations comments are framed there is they're looking for that diversified revenue source. And it seems to me that the state of fact is that the main revenue source to ODF is timber, and that has to be considered in this. As you make an FMP, that there is that just currently existing kind of factual situation.
Sure. Yeah. And again, at this stage, there was no fact checking. There was no this doesn't make any sense, anything like that. So these are all just presented as summaries of what we heard, and not as and here's something we should do about that, or we can't do that thing because it would be illegal, or that takes a legislative fix. Rather, funding sources, that's the legislative fix. That's not something that's within our control in the forest management plan, which I think is the point you're making. So, right, exactly. These are the comments we received. We're summarizing them. If something requires a legislative fix, that would require us to go to the legislature or them to go to the legislature or something along those lines. So, yeah, that's just kind of where we are in the process.
Should, yeah, and looking at the focus here, I mean, I think one thing that the comment letter has is a lot of focus on greatest permanent value and just the legal requirements of greatest permanent value. So I might think of the focus as providing greatest permanent value, and I think that the county's letter, that the consideration of working forests and rural economies and public services in greatest permanent value is a key thing, but actually the delivery of greatest permanent value overall is a real focus, and that since the revenue model basically is such that timber is the main source, that has to be considered as part of the FMP discussion.
Thanks. Okay, so this table in its entirety, it's broken across a few slides here, but this will be in the staff report and going to the board as this table. And again, this is a subset. I'm going to get into a summary of the comments that are holistic, but wanted to sort of recognize that there are some very active voices, and they provide a range of perspectives and comments. Yeah. Oh, yes. And Mike was just reminding me that we've also taken the CFTLC letter that was submitted, and we're including that in its entirety with the board staff report, recognizing that FTLAC has that statutory relationship with the board. So we're summarizing some comments here, but it's a little bit inappropriate to speak on behalf of FTLAC when you can speak for yourselves and you've got that statutory relationship. So we have included the entirety of your comments as an attachment to the staff report as well. So they'll see those along with the comment summary from everybody else. Digging into what's in the table here, first, the overall focus of the comments from the counties focusing on the importance of funding county public services, while industry primary focus was on sustainable and predictable supply of timber, and the conservation groups had a focus on shifting from harvest to attention to management for habitat and ecosystem health. Not surprisingly, the comments on the funding model reinforced the focus. Counties seeking timber to continue to be the primary source of funding for state forests and no additional restrictions on harvest. Industry also seeking to have harvest maximized and as opposed to seeking alternative sources of funding. And conservation groups would like to see less logging and more diverse funding. Moving on to harvest levels, the counties would like the department to adopt their recommendations for sustainable harvest and oppose additional restrictions on harvest. Industry values having transparent harvest targets and active management on areas outside of the habitat conservation areas, or HCAs. Conservation would like to see less harvest, especially in areas with older trees. And when it comes to habitat conservation, county and industry perspectives are aligned with the HCP meeting conservation needs and again opposing additional restrictions beyond what's already there. Conservation would like to see more protection above what's in the HCP and also efforts to recover species going beyond what's in the HCP.
Can I offer a comment right there on just on kind of this group here with this habitat conservation kind of supporting with the HCP as sufficient and opposing restrictions beyond the HCP. I mean, I think it's clear that the maximized volume scenario from the modeling goes beyond the HCP, right? It supports more dispersal habitat outside of HCAs than the HCP would allow. So I think I'm a little concerned about some of the framing here around what the counties want, just in that I think a real focus of the letter was a tie back to greatest permanent value, and that there is not an idea that the HCP is the end of kind of habitat conservation on the lands. I think there's a number of laws that obviously drive harvest or management of lands, including Forest Practices Act. I think that the Forest Management Plan itself has other aspects in it, including that maximize harvest objective, where you would I pull the microphone closer. Harvest at the culmination of median increment, a little bit longer rotation, which has habitat conservation benefits. So I think this is a really important thing. It's not that the HCP is the end of conservation. It's that for the counties, it's that there's a whole package being offered here under the FMP that includes the HCP, but there's also legal requirements. So just want to highlight that. Thanks.
I see that Commissioner Bangs has her hand up. Commissioner Bangs?
And just to follow up with what Mr. Buffo has alluded to is I feel like it needs to be written in these and rewritten over again, the giant environmental commitment that we have just made in regards to the Habitat Conservation Plan, and that everything within the Habitat Conservation Plan is also building habitat both inside and outside of the HCAs, and it is beneficial to the environment continually. I mean, multiple chapters dedicated to environmental protections within the Habitat Conservation Plan. And so to allude that the counties are only interested in economics is frustrating, because that's only part of the story. And so I agree with Mr. Buffo, and I just wish that there was a little bit more of a presentation to the community when this is going forward to the Board of Forestry. As a reminder, hey, we have committed a lot to the environment. It is a huge environmental commitment on the backs of our industry and on the backs of our small districts and our social services. And so, and it's to the detriment of. And so I just really want to lean into that. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Fournier.
I just want to add to what Courtney just said. Also, in addition to that, just to remind them that it is the timber harvest that are paying for all the conservation efforts and all the things that are happening in the HCP. And we had this discussion last year also that, all the carbon banking that's happening is part of one forest. This is one forest that we have separated. So all the benefits in conservation, I feel like they still try to talk as separate. I want to make sure that we don't talk about a separate forest. The HCP is within, especially in Tillamook, is within the Tillamook State Forest. It's one forest. This is our conservation effort that we've committed to that is being paid for by the harvest over here. Because there's this big push to just make it all a conservation area. So I just wanted to echo those thoughts as well. Thank you.
And Justin, I was going to say, is this a public document? Well, I guess this kind of is a public document because we're having a public meeting, but I am a little concerned about some of the interpretation, or I guess perhaps how people might interpret some of these statements that you've synthesized, into taking big stuff and made it little. So I'm trying to think of moving forward how we deal with that conversation.
But yeah, I think we certainly have space today to make any corrections to that. This table has not gone out as part of the staff report yet, so there is time to make those corrections. If you feel that the way we've characterized your comments is inappropriate, we can certainly, I think we have space to make those corrections today.
Thank you. Is that Mr. Wilson?
Yes, thank you. Mike Wilson, State Forest Division Chief. We're a little bit ahead of our normal schedule with this meeting. We bumped it up a week because next week wasn't feasible. So we've had less prep time on this presentation. So, and this is good feedback actually to get in the public forum, because we're hearing rationale and that's good. And we can make the adjustments. And so that'll be so that to better inform the board, which is part of what this is about. So
Right, that's kind of our purpose, is to bring information to the board that reflects what has been submitted. So thank you so much. So Mike, you're writing all that down.
Perfect. Okay, so next, climate change. Counties and industry recognize the importance of climate smart forestry, emphasize the value of wood products, the wood products industry, and its contributions to carbon sequestration and economic outcomes. Conservation organizations would like the climate change and carbon plan, CCCP. Climate change and carbon plan, to be implemented and to have longer rotations to sequester more carbon. When it comes to water quality, county and industry comments didn't really emphasize water quality issues, recognizing that existing rules ensure water quality needs are met, while conservation organizations had many calls for water quality to be a greatest permanent value, ban the use of pesticides, and to restore impaired streams.
I think if I could comment on that, just a little bit more on the water quality. I believe there is minimal emphasis in the comment letter on additional things around, additional requirements around water quality. I do think also that that's something it's regulated by Congress, it's regulated by the state legislature and Department of Environmental Quality, and so that it's just an area that we're not able to make standards on, and they're kind of determining standards for what good water quality is, and that I believe your management is designed to meet those standards. So it's more about the purpose here is to follow the law, and that law is really outside of what is done, at FTLC or ODF.
Yeah, and that's really an important point to recognize. This comment is about the plan and only the plan, or it should be. because it's a rulemaking about the plan. So there are lots of exogenous factors at play here, other laws, other plans that might impact management. But when it comes to comment about the plan itself, that's what we really sought to summarize here. So things like follow the law, the federal law that's already in place, the Clean Water Act, and that sort of thing. Fantastic. We have to do that. The plan can't not let us, give us a get out of jail free card on the Clean Water Act as an example. So yeah, just to kind of ground back into this is really about the forest management plan, but you're absolutely right. We do have to follow those other things, and they're always at play. Sure. Yeah.
Commissioner Bangs?
In the regards to the conversation of carbon and sequestration, I would just like to make note of a reminder of the Oregon State University study that identified 60-year rotations as being the optimal range of age for maximum carbon sequestration. So, and just to as a reminder to those in the room, but maybe in conversation or even in print if it comes down to just let's use most recent science.
Thank you, Commissioner Banks.
Okay, and then we have public engagement. And hey, you all agreed. So all voices were aligned that the department did not involve them enough. So that's really just sort of that initial summary, the tale in 3 parts, looking at that subset of comments, highlighting some perspectives across the different interest groups and our county partners. Moving next into really trying to set up what might be viewed as some bookends of if we put sort of financial priorities on one side and conservation priorities on the other, we can provide some bookend. And before I get into that, I do see that there's a hand raised, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Bangs?
I do want to take issue with a statement that was just made. The Department of Forestry is partners with the county and should be listening to the counties, and that's part of ORS. Special interest groups are not listed, and so when you're hearing across the board that there hasn't been enough engagement, and then you kind of dust the counties up into that conversation, I kind of take issue with that. I just want to again highlight the counties are your partner. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so something we saw in the comments quite a bit was on guiding principle number 3. And so on one hand, it was lauded as critically important to ensure the counties and state forest divisions' self-sufficiency, while the other hand really did not like this principle at all and called for its removal or its amendment as it creates a perverse incentive to harvest. The topic of clear cutting also got a lot of airtime, with one side calling for its cessation and the other saying it's necessary to ensure efficiency and viability as we go through and do our timber harvest operation.
Justin?
Yes.
So, and it says that Principle 3 violates state law. Can you help me out?
Yeah, there was a perspective that guiding principle number 3 was really in violation of the greatest permanent value rule. And so that's, again, everything is summarized here based on what we heard without sort of analysis as to whether it's true or not. But yeah, that was the perspective, was that by harvesting, you're violating greatest permanent value, or by funding everything through harvest, you're violating greatest permanent value. Yeah.
Thank you, Mike.
This is something where, we've heard a number of times recently, and I think it's really just about, people feel like we are pressured to harvest more than, in their opinion, we should, because of that that provision. And like Justin said, this is just filtering what we got from the public comment.
For Age at Harvest, comments on one hand stated current rotations are adequate for meeting revenue and workforce stability needs and shouldn't be increased, while others call for extending rotations to meet ecological needs. Comments also focused on maintaining the current funding model and recognizing that funding is essential for the counties, schools, and rural economies, and that there's no certainty with the alternatives. While on the other hand, we should be seeking a diversified funding model with things such as carbon credits, recreation fees, and reinstituting the severance tax.
I'm curious, I realize this is a summary of comments, but I'm thinking about the as it's phrased here, like the timber revenue is essential for counties, and that's true because that's the main source of revenue for ODF, and therefore the revenue is able to be passed on to the counties. But is that, it just doesn't seem like that's inherently mutually exclusive from the diversification either, right? As long as there is that split in revenue between the counties and ODF, right? So I think that there are a couple things at play. Of course, we in the comment letter talk about jobs, talk about rural economies that the timber brings specifically, but the revenue side is it's to say that the timber revenue is important is true because it is the source. But if there are other sources, that's also potentially important revenue to bring in both for ODF and for the counties, I think.
Yep, absolutely. Timber harvest, when it comes to carbon sequestration, recognition that timber harvest contributes to the carbon benefits through durable wood products and that active management supports resilience, while on the other hand, a critique of clear cutting undermining climate goals. When it comes to recreation, recognition that timber harvest is the primary economic driver and recreation is secondary was a common theme throughout those with a sort of financial priority. Whereas conservation-focused commenters noted recreation was core to the greatest permanent value and harvest harms recreational and scenic values.
Can I ask, it's a little bit of a fact check question, but regarding the statement here that timber harvest is the primary economic driver and recreation is secondary. You do bring in the most money from timber, and I'm wondering if you have a sense on like a per acre basis, which one brings in more revenue?
You mean timber or recreation?
Yeah, I mean, I'm yeah, exactly.
Clearly timber.
Okay, I mean, I'm just curious. That's what I wanted to know, right? Is it's kind of the fact check of the statement here. There's of course the comments here get at other things around greatest permanent value, but I just want to highlight that this as written here, this statement seems to be true. That timber is the primary economic driver and recreation is secondary from a revenue perspective.
I would, yeah, for the department, that's definitely true. Some might make an argument about the county's economy and what impact from like using a regional model, the recreation visitation, recreation and tourism, people spending money at grocery stores and gas stations and that sort of thing. That's not what's meant here. So your statement is correct, and yes, that. Absolutely. By orders of magnitude, there's a difference there.
Thanks for that clarification, Justin.
Yeah. But even if we went so far as to expand to include purchases at fuel, restaurants, grocery stores, other recreation sites that now have access to the amount that we've committed, unless we need to commit a whole bunch more to being recreation sites, that's a drop in the bucket and it's very seasonal. And so, whereas the timber volume is exponentially larger, and they aren't, and even though this one reads where clear cutting harms the scenic quality. And I know that there was a effort years ago to stop all red colored tents and blue tarps and to get rid of certain colors of clothing in the wilderness because it distracts from the scenic value. I believe that maybe we should focus on this is in fact limited by funding. If we try to create more recreation and there's not the market for it and it's not well enough developed, it'll not be profitable. It'll be a sink of money that will drive you insane. And I continue to offer the counties should be able to help you with recreation. We could talk about that, should talk about that down the road.
Thank you, Commissioner.
That's an excellent point, Commissioner Tucker. And since we've in the legislature have been talking about the TLT tax, this kind of makes me smile as to recreation being able to help the counties, yes, but then everybody wants to get their hand in that pocket. And I just want to say that clear cutting, that is not a universal opinion that clear cutting harms scenic quality, because I know lots of people who love to see clear cuts and love to see the bones of the hills and then to watch that progression of growth. So, I mean, this is a personal comment kind of, but I just kind of don't appreciate that. Commissioner Bangs.
Where does the funding come from to pay for your recreation staff?
Almost all recreation staff are paid out of the Forest Development Fund, so the funding would come from timber.
And so basically, to pay your recreation staff, it comes from harvest of timber. And so I guess the argument that recreation makes money when we have to spend money to create it and it doesn't pay for itself, you couldn't charge permit fees high enough to make it pay for itself, which is concerning. And I apologize for the door slamming occurring in my household right now. But another note to make is that hunters are also folks that recreate, and you wouldn't be able to provide grazing for those animals with which, need large clear-cut spaces, elk, deer, so on and so forth. And that is also a part of habitat needs. I just want to make note, elk, deer, clear cutting go hand in hand. Hunters are also recreationists. So, just a further dialogue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe before we go to Commissioner Fournier, I just asked Joe, in your presentation at the end of the meeting, maybe you could just make a note to include a few numbers on what the recreation revenues are, where they come from, and then what the expenditures are. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Fournier.
Yeah, again, I'll tag on to what Courtney said. One of the things that really bothers me about all of this, and I don't know why ODF seems to do this rather than recognizing these pure facts. One of the things is they're very myopic if we're focusing on recreation being people just walk in the woods and look at pretty trees. I ride off-road motorcycles up in the Tillamook Forest all the time, and there's a lot of people that do that are buying ATV passes and have spending money at food and hotels and campgrounds. But here's the thing that people don't forget. People seem to forget. It's my understanding, unless someone from ODF can prove me wrong, that you cannot build a campground within the HCA. You can't build bathrooms, facilities, and parking lots within an HCA. We have a campground that called Demolay, which is at milepost 13 on Highway 6, that used to be owned by the county. And prior to my being here, which I'm very upset about, we did a land trade with ODF for some Trask Basin land that was adjacent to our campground. So we traded that, and Kate left the room, but it was a joke with her was I wanted it back. I want to lease it back for $1 a year and put and redevelop the campground there. And as I went up there and toured with with the state, the interim Tillamook State Forester, Ed Walmark. I asked him, we walked through that campground and we looked up and he goes, well, this is in the ACA. I said, well, does that mean I can't develop it? And the answer was, I don't think you can. So I just want to remind folks, like, this is like it's self-defeating, creating just a forest that no one can enjoy unless you uh, are part of a specific group of recreationalists. And fishermen and hunters don't fit into that mold. Off-road riders don't fit into that mold. I just want to be very cautious about that. If we reduce, we are only able to make money, including recreation hubs, campgrounds, and cabins and yurts and all that. If we can only do that within the places where we can harvest, that also limits harvest because now we're taking up that space for recreational opportunities. So this is why it's maddening sometimes. And the money made from the recreation currently in the forest is not a lot to Tillamook County, but TLT money is a lot to Tillamook County because those are places that are outside of the state forest. Thank you.
Chief Wilson, did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, so obviously, there are some differences inside HCA's and outside of HCA's with recreation infrastructure. The further development of recreation infrastructure is not entirely prohibited, especially if there's a site that already exists. And I don't really think it has to be our site, if we were to acquire it. But if there's a site that already exists, there's a process for going about expansion and improvement of that. That said, there's a lot in the HCA's around the habitat it's supposed to provide that would limit certain types of, shall we say, hard infrastructure developments, not so much trails and things. All things have some considerations built in about exactly where they're placed, but.
Thank you for that clarification. There are just too many rules and regulations that everybody wants to enforce here and there and everywhere. It's hard to keep up.
Okay, so moving along, we received many comments about water quality, and those with a focus on financial outcomes noted that current rules protect water quality. Those with a conservation focus stated that clear cutting and the use of pesticides harmed water quality and called for limits to harvest activity within drinking watersheds.
I would comment on this just to the kind of, I don't know if the counties are in this as the financial priorities side. I would say the county's position from the letter is the priority is greatest permanent value, which seems different than financial priorities. I also think just from a fact check perspective, the statement active management and harvest are compatible with water protection under existing rules is factually the case. The rules allow for active management in watersheds. And I also think around this, there's kind of a positioning here of the financial, folks with financial priorities are different than folks with conservation priorities. And I think it's clear that the HCP is a significant conservation objective. That's something now that's supported by the counties. And there's also a substantial amount of the area of state forests is unavailable for clear cutting, due to the HCAs here. So I think there's, I agree there's conflicting viewpoints out there about what water quality should be. I think this is a little bit, it really kind of sets this out as a real dichotomy, but I think there's a little more to it. And what the whole package of greatest permanent value is, right? It's a financial aspect, it's a conservation aspect, it's a recreation aspect. There's just a lot more to it than folks interested in finances and folks interested in conservation. Thanks.
I think it's difficult to synthesize some of these things into sound bites that really capture the entirety of the picture.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's not a lot of room for nuance in this. So as I started out saying, we received over 2,700 comments. The PDF document that so far has most of the comments in it. I haven't yet scanned in all of the handwritten letters and postcards and that sort of thing. It'll add in another 50 pages or so. But it's over 4,200 pages of comments. And so I've taken 4,200 pages of comments and distilled that down into a summary that's about 40 pages. And then I've taken that summary of about 40 pages and summarized it into a handful of slides here that are just little short statements. So I can appreciate that there's a lot of nuance, and I recognize that there's a lot of nuance to your comments, to industry's comments, to conservation groups' comments. I did not set out to misrepresent anyone's comments, and really just trying to, yeah, it's sound bites. And so that's all it is. We're not advocating for a position here. Again, this is just a summary of the comments. So we're not making a recommendation, advocating for a position on this. We're not saying this side is right or this side is wrong. Just trying to provide a flavor for where the comments came in, so that as we're here today, the county commissioners you can start thinking about your thoughts and how you want to approach the board, and then how the board can receive all of this comment and your input, and really think about what needs to be changed about the rule, and that policy space that's between these bookends somewhere, right? There's a full range there.
And that's part of what this conversation is today, is to make sure that what we think we said is what we said and what you heard.
Absolutely.
And thank goodness we're not dealing with the Epstein files, because 4,200 pages is not very much.
I did have to redact no, I kid.
Commissioner Tucker.
And so, Justin, I want to make sure you understand that any comment I make, and I think all of us are making, are not intended about the quality of the work. It's the fact that your writing and your synthesizing has a perspective, and our writing and our opinions have some perspective. And some of the things we might be saying might be counter to what one county may have told you. So I understand you're in a really tough position. So please don't take any of your comments as anything other than, I appreciate you've done this synthesization. I mean, I would not want the Epstein files. I would not want 4,200 pages of ODF testimony, right? So thank you so much for doing that.
Of course. Okay, so just a couple of these left, and I think there'll be a few minutes maybe for a little bit of conversation to keep us on track here. So one of the last topics here, adaptive management. So recognition that it's a core tenet of forestry, and those with a focus on financial outcomes felt that the approach allowed for flexibility in response to changing conditions. Conservation Voices often stated that they wanted SMART goals and transparency with reporting and that sort of thing codified. And then lastly, when it came to harvest restrictions, comments about harvest restrictions called for no additional restrictions to maintain forestry jobs and county revenue. On the one hand, on the other, Conservation Voices felt that heavy logging actually reduces the economic health of local communities in the long run, and instead there should be a focus on recreation and ecosystem services. Saved probably the most provocative statement I could have made to this group for last. So there you have it. And so with that, really, it's the tip of the iceberg. Like I said, we received thousands of pages of comments, and really just trying to summarize it in a way here to provide some insights. In terms of next steps, whoops, I lost my presentation. But in terms of next steps, what we are looking at is providing this summary of comments to the board at its March meeting in just a few weeks. Then in June, we'll return with a final draft forest management plan that reflects any of our recommended changes to the current draft that went into rulemaking. And then final adoption of the FMP expected later this year, maybe in September. So with that, welcome any questions or discussion, statements, that sort of thing.
Thank you. It's fascinating how one's perspective is so ingrained in their personal life experiences. As I look at this, that heavy logging depresses long-term community wealth. Having lived in a community that was built on logging, that just kind of doesn't work well in my mind. Commissioner Banks.
Just to make note of, a person's perspective is built on experiences. I think my perspective is built on how to pay the bills. And that's my experience throughout my entire life is how am I going to pay my bills? And so I hope that ODF and the Board of Forestry moves into this discussion with how are we going to pay the bills? Because our fiscal outlook in the state of Oregon is bleak. You've witnessed numerous arguments at the Capitol. I've participated in discussions just regarding how are we going to pay the bills? And our our constituents in the state of Oregon do not have more money to donate to the cause of paying the state of Oregon's bills. And so I hope that as ODF and the Board of Forestry moves into the conversation of what are we going to do with the FMP, that they have a lens of how are we going to pay our bills? Because if this is turning into a conversation where you're going to need money out of the general fund, watching what's occurring with ODOT and watching what's occurring on the landscape right now with our taxpayers in the state of Oregon, they are not interested in providing state agencies more money to pay their bills. And so I just hope that we move into the next discussion because as a county leader, I cannot turn to my constituents and ask them for more money to pay our bills when we don't have funding coming through timber harvest. So we're all kind of in the same position. We're all in the same discussion. It's at different levels, obviously. Each county has a different bucket of money that they're working with, but we are all in that discussion. And so I hope that moving forward, the question, how are we going to pay our bills, is at the top of everybody's mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Banks. Any other, Mike?
Just a question
Mr.
for Mike Wilson, I think here. Yeah, can you talk about like how the process goes on from here? So you've just gotten all these comments, 4,500 some odd pages of comments. And so you've looked at them, you're going to hand these off to the board, or at least a summary of these to the board. And they'll comment on those, I suppose, in the March meeting. And then is it you said is it the June meeting that this is planned to be approved? So do you anticipate to make changes into the FMP based on the comments? Do you expect to wait for the board to tell you to make changes into it? Is that, with the new, because isn't the FMP is like the state forester's view on management of the land. So would you be waiting for the new state forester to kind of opine on this? What will you do at this point?
Right. So I don't, given that this is a board rule, I don't think we're necessarily waiting on the next state forester to come up to speed with this before, that's not going to keep us from moving forward. I think so we'll bring this to them in March. We hope to get some feedback from them as a board in March. We always continue to work with board members as well. They can provide us with their comments as individual board members. We can evaluate how we might, make changes or not to the FMP. What will come out then in June is the draft final rule. And then we will actually proceed to another round of rulemaking. And that wasn't in the original plan. But there are a couple of factors there. One, governor expectations around what she calls tier 3 rules, and doing this, saying make sure the final draft rule is there, put it through another round of public hearing, and then do it. The other thing is ODFW was sued, and the case was decided in November of last year. It was around some fish passage stuff, and there was just a change there. And what plaintiffs in that case were saying is like, how could we have possibly commented on this final rule when this wasn't the final rule at that time and this has changed? So it's a little counterintuitive, right? I mean, the public process, the APA is like, okay, you gather the comment, you make changes to your rule, and then you got a final rule and you approve it. Anyway, they lost the case. So in terms of being safe with what we're doing here, we will ask them for approval to do that second round of rulemaking. And then we will bring back the actual final rule for approval, or we'll bring back that draft final rule for approval in September. So that's the game plan. Yeah. So this was the first round. However, there's you start to you want to make sure you're getting it right with your draft final rule and this kind of a thing. Otherwise, you could easily get caught in a do loop of rulemaking. And that's certainly not the intent, I don't think, of the court ruling. And certainly not the intent of the APA. So yeah, I think when we come back in September, you're going to end up with a draft. You're going to end up with that June draft final rule getting approved. And so it's really about the work that's still happening between now and then.
Mike, I'll tell you the truth. There's the slide here about public engagement has this kind of criticism of late stage public input. And I was wondering if this was late stage public input because it's been quite a number of years that the FMP's worked on, but it actually sounds like this is actually kind of early because we've reviewed this now and then there'll be the rulemaking process and public comment. So there's more to come on that. And this is just really the first view of what the FMP will look like as a whole package. Is that right?
Right. Well, and in the sense that this first round is rulemaking, right? Everything here counts what we do. It's just that second round of rulemaking as well. So yeah, it's just an additional round that we were not originally anticipating.
Thanks, Mike.
And the continued additional rounds, to me, I'm envisioning that we use lots of paper and all of that, which really does emphasize the need for harvest. Are there any other comments or? You're done, Justin? Fabulous. Thank you so much for all of that information and for trying to synthesize it into something that we could all appreciate and comment on.
Morning, Commissioners. Again, my name is Todd Heron. I'm the Information Unit Manager for State Forests. And I'm going to talk briefly about the performance measure staff report that is being presented to the board in March. Unfortunately, Tyson Weprich, our adaptive management specialist who did the bulk of this work, was not available today. So I'm going to wing it in a way and lean heavily on Nick and Mike to help me through this. Recall in November, we brought forward some modeling results. Excuse me. And for a couple specific scenarios. And along with those results, there was kind of a limited subset of the performance measures. And so there was a request from the board to expand on those and provide a more thorough example of the content that would be made available for those and how those performance measures would be reported on going forward. So we were able to do that. Excuse me. So using out of the November, there were some requests to look at some other modeling scenarios. We weren't able to do that. We didn't have time to expand on that. So what we've done here is used the modeling scenarios that we had available to provide some more context around the performance measures and the component metrics. And so that's what was presented in the staff report. The graphs and charts help illuminate how those performance measures will be used in terms of monitoring and reporting to provide information to the board as they deliberate on the outcomes and of outcomes related to the FMP and the implementation thereof going forward. So just maybe I'll just leave it at that. And in the staff report, there's more detail about the performance measures. Recall there's 11 large high-level performance measures, each intended to represent groups, high-level topics of outcomes related to implementation and performance around our management and operations relative to the FMP, implementing the FMP. Each one of those performance measures includes, we've arrived at a number of component metrics to help characterize the outcomes associated with those higher level performance measures. And so it's those component metrics that we would then monitor over time, either through direct survey or through capturing relative to the implementation of the FMP. And so those the component metrics would they'd be reported on at various timescales, depending on the detail necessary to evaluate those metrics. Let's see. Maybe let's see. Not sure how to tick through these. We can, happy to walk through these. We have a couple slides indicating the individual performance measures and metrics. The staff report has some examples of how those outputs would be used in terms of the graphs and charts that help identify how some of those would be reported over time. So maybe I'll just tick through. I can just read these off and we can talk about them as I go through them if you want, or if you have specific questions.
A question prior to.
I guess we're gonna go through them one by one. So when we get to the financial piece, the economic opportunities piece, I didn't see carbon sequestration listed, and I thought that would be a direction we were thinking we might actually be moving towards in the future, and we would want to see that if we had a chance to write some goals around that, at least goals to explore, at least goals to look at finding a way to value what we've done when we put so much aside.
Okay.
Nick, you look like you want to say something.
Yeah, that's hi, Nick Palisato, Deputy Chief. I just, for a little more context as we start to walk through these. So then the intent is we're bringing these to the board in March with data that reflects the conversation that we had back in November. So it's sort of a stepwise 215 in the first 10-year period, moving downwards over the first three. And with some flexibility there, I think plus or minus 5%, but then also some bookends on that. So we're going to show you how, for the metrics that we can derive outcomes from the model, we'll show you how that proposed harvest regime looks at 215 with the stepwise. And then also, can you move your thing so I can see what he says right there? On the upper end, we're going to be showing 225 and then 185 with even flow on the bottom end to try and get you some quasi confidence intervals there. So as we're presenting these to you now and we're discussing them, that's the intent there, is bring those to the board. That gives them some sense of what the interplay is or what the space is. And we can talk about
are these the right measures? Are there targets? It's getting somewhat to what Will just mentioned too. So on carbon, these aren't the end all be all is the point. These are the starting point for the discussion.
So, you have something you wanted to say?
Yes, Commissioner Tucker, I think if I'm reading you right, I think there's a piece here where it would probably result in a change in the FMP and the goals around that, saying to seek those areas of diversification. I think in the finances and in the financial support for counties metrics here, maybe we should have further discussion about whether we would carve that diversity out in terms of how it's reported. I mean, because that's something we could easily do. Or are you saying having some kind of a target towards some kind of diversification?
We've talked a couple of times about carbon sequestration as a future revenue source. And yet I don't see it always in every presentation. And so it is one more revenue model we should be, I think, trying to understand. And is there a market for us to sell what we're setting aside? Or once we've set it aside, have we lost its financial value in the market? It's the potential to set something aside that's of value. So I don't know when we make these commitments, whether it really is true or not, that we have a value that we thought we had when we talk about it in a preference. But I would sure like to see us have a goal that says we understand that, because we've talked about it so many times over the last few years, yet there's not a goal for implementing and trying to start bringing revenue from. And I think we should set a goal. It's my opinion. But thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Persinger?
Just to clarify something that you said a minute ago, Nick, you said you were taking before the board 185 to 225. I guess what I'm looking for clarity on is what you all took to the board last November was options 1, 2, 3, and the counties presented a 2.5, for lack of a better term. 2A, I think is what we called it. The board did not make a decision last November which one of those 3 or 4, if they were able to consider what the counties brought forward, which one of those to move forward with. So 185 to 225, if memory serves, is pretty close to the scenario 1, I think, that was presented. So I guess my question is, are you only bringing forward additional information about one of those 4 scenarios, or are you bringing, I guess, all of this information for everything that was presented in November so they have a full package of information to consider?
So the conversation with the board is going to be in March is going to be very contextual around this. It's primarily are these, so one of the things we have not gotten from the board yet, right, despite having presented this a couple times, is are these the things you're interested in, the performance measures and the component metrics? Does this fit the bill? And so as the case example of that, rather than running through a whole bunch of scenarios again, we're going to take our scenario 5A, right, that we brought to him and say, okay, look, this is what that would look like in terms of that. They are not going to be setting targets or desired trends or anything like that in March around that. So it's basically, it's like, while we're talking about the nature of the performance measures, let's talk about one example. We're not doing a scenario comparison like we were in November.
Will they be setting targets at all at some point in the future?
That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, it kind of remains to be seen. And those targets in a lot of cases might very well be trends. They want to see increasing something. They don't want to set a number. There's a variety of opinion around that, and that's some of the conversation that they need to have. We don't need the performance measures, to all in place with targets or trends or whatever to get to a rule adoption, quite frankly. All they need to do is see that they've got the space in there to express that. And then, of course, there's the question of, because their performance measures will change over time in terms of what they think is important, what they don't think is important, and, the kind of trends that they might want to see in these various things. So, and some of them are actually a little bit outside of board purview in a lot of ways, like a lot of the, the aquatic and riparian resources, largely driven by HCP monitoring, right? It's a reportable, it can be out there and say, look, here's a performance measure for you to look at because it's important to the HCP. It's also just important to you. And so we'll report that piece there. But yeah, some of the other ones, they still need to decide if these are the right things.
I have a follow-up, if that's okay, Brent. Yeah. I'm just curious, will the board be able to set performance measures before the rulemaking is done? Because if there's a different plan, the performance measures be different?
Right. So anything that they tell us now is basically predicated on a plan. But these things in their nature and the things that they're looking at could be applicable in a broad sense to any plan that they would approve. Right. So I think that's really the kind of thing. It's like this is what's important to you. And so how would you guide the state forester's management of state forest lands in order to then, achieve some trends or targets or whatever that they would set later on? So this is really the conversation about the what. Yeah.
Mr. Persinger?
Does the 185 to 225 number, Nick, that you mentioned a second ago, does that include the common school fund lands?
This Nick, Deputy Chief, yeah, Todd's nodding yes, and those are a reminder. Those are sort of what we're calling the bookends of the performance metric modeling.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess just for the context for the commissioners, as a reminder, common school fund lands is usually about 10 million board feet. So then we're actually looking 175 to 205. Or 175 to 215, right? 185 to 225. Yeah, 215.
Yeah.
Commissioner Bangs?
So just for I think clarity for myself, what I'm hearing is the board hasn't made a decision. They really haven't shared what's important to you as of yet. What does that do to the timeline that was presented at the previous meeting, or it may have been the meeting before that, in regards to the HCP, federal services, when that is getting approved, and then when is the timeline for the FMP approval? Because I think our IPs hinge on this, our AOPs hinge on, so much is hinging on what's going to happen in the next 6 months. I'm just curious about the timelines now. And to be clear, the board really hasn't made a decision or shared with you what is important to them, correct?
Yeah, individual board members have shared with us what's important to them, and they've made some comments, I think, in their public meetings as individual board members, what's important. But as a board, they have not landed fully on these performance measures and component metrics yet. This piece, so given that the state forester sets harvest levels, which is a key component of, obviously the driver sort of the implementation plans, because, it's the tool we have that affects all these other things. I don't, we can move forward. We can move forward even if the performance measures are not all entirely set with targets and trends and so forth. Regarding the timeline with the HCP, we're still looking for incidental take permits to show up between June and early fall. They may come together. They may come one first and the other one later, that sort of thing. We are already thinking about how we tee up the rule to ensure that we don't adopt a plan and then don't get ITPs, for instance. So we can do a conditional setting on that rule. Just say, you know, if it doesn't happen, then it reverts to, you know, well, doesn't revert, just stays with our current rule. And also making sure that it's post-dated appropriately to take effect with FY 2028. So there's a lot of moving pieces there, but I think the performance measures are actually some of the most flexible of those pieces at this point.
Follow up real fast, Chair. Could I do a follow up real fast?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you. And just in regards to this waiting scenario that we're in, are we still surveying? And will we continue to survey until we have incidental take permits in hand or until we have other resolutions?
We basically don't have a choice but to continue our threatened and endangered species surveys.
Mr. Buffo.
Question a little bit in a different direction here. There's 26 total performance measures here. And I'm just curious about the staffing requirements. I know the timing will be different for each bit of reporting, but do you know, how does this affect the staff capacity, or do you need additional staff capacity to do this level of monitoring? And I think maybe a second part of that is there's other monitoring under the HCP that's required. That's correct? And that's separate from this?
At a high level, and Todd might want to weigh in on it a little bit here, but at a high level, we anticipate overall a savings from our T&E survey contracting to likely some monitoring contracting. A large number of these metrics obviously are fed by our inventory, either by the FIA plot network or by our LiDAR enhanced forest inventory, or both. And then some of them are going to be just completed by contractors. I imagine like a lot of the aquatic and riparian stuff, although in cooperation with ODFW, you know, trying to leverage those programs. So we'll be looking for the maximal cost efficiency associated with that. We're not currently envisioning that we will need additional staff capacity beyond what we have.
It's amazing how we look at things differently. 26 performance measures, and I'm going, oh, they're 11. But then I looked at all of the A, B, C, and Ds, and there are 26. Thank you, Mr. Buffo, for that. And so, speaking of perspective, how do you put these in 1 to 11? I mean, is this a regular process? Because I mean, I think that makes a difference too when people look at things. So is adaptive capacity of forest the most important thing?
It's alphabetical, Chair. Vice Chair. It's the most objective approach we could find, right?
Okay.
Very good.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Right. Oh, certainly.
Oh, Commissioner Banks. All right.
Just in regards to perspectives, as we're moving forward with numbers and harvest levels and so on and so forth, I've noticed a reoccurring trend of dusting up the common school funds in all of the conversations and all of the numbers. I would really appreciate separating common school out when we're having these discussions, because it changes the number substantially for us. It's, 10 million board feet at least. And so even if it's a side by side, because I know that the board deals with the common school also, but that doesn't have the end game social impact shown. And so it's a narrative. It's when people look back on the numbers, or say somebody from the newspaper is investigating, they'll see a number, but it's not the true number that we're dealing with as counties. And so I just would really appreciate a little bit more delineation because again, it's perspective.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I can make a couple more points about the performance measures as they're as they're written here. I did want to clarify the 185 scenario that we keep referring to, which was, I believe, 1A originally. That 185 number does refer to the Board of Forestry only target. So the actual outcome that's reported was in excess, I forget the number, but it was in excess of that 185 for the 30-year term. So just point of clarification there. So onto the, back onto the performance measures, just real quick, I thought I'd touch on a couple of these. Like Mike said, a lot of these will be derived from our inventory. So we have a couple inventory programs, couple directions that we're working on with our inventory program. One is, we've talked about it before, the FIA, the Forest Inventory and Analysis Program that's coordinated through the Forest Service. A number of years ago, we densified the plots associated with that network on state forests. And so a lot of these metrics, especially the ones related to forest inventory, growth, adaptive capacity, species composition, will be derived from those measurement plots on the FIA network. And we intend to continue with that program. And so in the case of stand age distributions, species composition, 10-year growth rates, those would all be, we would leverage those plot measurements. They're measured on a 10-year panel basis. So every year, 10% of the plots across the network are remeasured. So over time, you get a really good perspective on how things are changing across the forest in terms of vegetation change and growth and conditions. Other metrics, such as, the finance and, the actual harvest numbers, those will be derived, of course, from the direct outputs that we capture. And again, most of those would be able to report on annually through our regular annual reports. And so the numbers would look very similar to those. Still others we need to further develop. So like number 2, the aquatic and riparian resources section. We do anticipate working in cooperation with the ODFNW to leverage some of their monitoring and reporting. It remains to be seen whether or not we'll need to hire some contractors to implement some of these other components. But like Mike said, most of these can be, or we've demonstrated that they can be derived from our inventory, or they're just direct reports from our outputs. I'm happy to go into more detail about any one of these. I know we're kind of short on time, so maybe I'll just stop there and field any questions.
Are there any additional questions on this particular subject? I do have one other question, though, in general, more on the rulemaking and the public comment. So if Council Forest Trust Land board members have any other additional thoughts, can we share them with you and how should we do that? Go through Brandon rather than individually sharing them?
So are you speaking to the actual rulemaking process or just generally on like these performance measures?
Either one.
So yeah, we have to be careful with the rulemaking process itself. So there will be that second round of rulemaking. Although, yeah, hopefully we're not doing a whole lot at that point because we do want that final rule to look pretty similar. So we're a little bit constrained there, I think. Obviously you still have your testimony in front of the board whenever they meet. And on things like the performance measures that are actually technically outside the plan, yeah, anytime. Yeah.
Thank you.
Justin, did I mess anything up? Okay.
Oh, Commissioner Banks.
So I'm just curious. We have a lot of performance measures here about how to care for the forest, how to move forward in management of said forest. Is there going to be a price tag attached to how much is this going to cost? Uh, and can we afford all of it? If that makes sense, because I'm looking at transportation and recreation and habitat and all these things that don't actually make money, they cost money. And so where we only make money is in harvest. And so I'm just wanting to see if we are right sizing our expectations and our plan, and if the board is going to be presented with information to allow them to make a decision that allows them to right size their expectations to how much money they actually have to work with. And so is that going to be an opportunity for the board to be able to visualize in a public meeting where this is how much you have financially coming in on average, and this is what we can afford to do with this. I'm just hoping that that discussion is had because there's a lot on here that is going to cost a lot of money.
Speak to that a little bit. I think, to that point, like we tried to explain, a lot of this comes from the inventory that we're currently either already implementing or anticipate, incorporating into our regular inventory process. For instance, virtually all of the adaptive capacity metrics, those will be derived from the FIA inventory or in concert with our enhanced forest inventory, which as regular course of business, we need to maintain a robust inventory. You mentioned the transportation performance measures, that the hydrologic connectivity, fish passage barriers, those are things that we are currently monitoring, right? We have a system in place for capturing information about hydrologic connectivity with the road system and the drainage associated with it. And fish passage is a regular item that we monitor and keep track of just as course of business. The ones where I see needing to develop perhaps some that would carry some cost, perhaps lost my train of thought there. Some of the economic outputs, right? We typically to report on those, we contracted out like the socioeconomic reports. So there would be some expense associated with some of those component metrics. Similarly, the aquatic and riparian resources, we anticipate using information from ODF&W, but perhaps we may need to supplement that. It remains to be seen. And then, there is some question about the adequacy of some of the measurements. So like we have the FIA data, we have the EFI, we have the inventory data. Is that robust enough? Is that sufficient for the boards to meet the board's expectations around responding to those performance measures? So while yes, I think there will be some potential added costs, but I think to Nick's point, overall the expectation is that there would be a savings relative to some of our other operational costs.
So you alluded to the phrase current. You're currently doing certain things. How is the Department of Forestry currently doing fiscally? Is there a budgetary struggle or are we doing just fine?
Well, there's always a budgetary struggle. Yeah. Right now, we do, of course, the 3-year revenue projections, and we see a decline in our operating reserve but we see it stabilizing going into and through the next biennium. So, we've got that going for us. When it comes to costs too, I think, going back to the previous question a little bit, the way that we have these teed up, with the exception of some of the aquatic stuff, there, as Todd mentioned, and the, sort of the jobs and other socioeconomic outcomes, if you will, that would require a new report. These are things that that we track or that we have existing data for, that we are able to just, you can slice and dice it differently, look at it differently. If, for instance, the board were to bring us a question at a scale, or with certain data components that we don't have, then, I mean, I guess partially there's a discussion there, but if it requires new expense to do it, it may very well be something that the department just says, we're sorry, board, we can report to you at this scale and, this granularity of data that you're interested in, but we can't go to the level you want because we can't afford that. And I think that's appropriate. It's in the fiscal discussion. And I think the board needs to certainly have, I'm fully supportive of the board having eyes on how our finances are doing and being cautious of maybe some of the desires they might have that might be very expensive.
I guess my original question circled back to, are you going to do a fiscal presentation to the board of how much their performance measures that they're requesting are going to cost before they're allowed to make the decision? And I don't think I've had an answer to that. It's kind of just, yes, they're going to be able to look at how much a lot of these performance measures are going to cost or no. And when working as a board member, I need to know that information so that I know that my decision doesn't have unintended consequences later down. So I hope that you present them with that information prior to them making a decision on the performance measures in this FMP.
Thank you. And that's something that we can certainly put some estimates on. One of the things that's not in the table shown on the slide, but is in the table that'll be coming out with a staff report is the data source for these component metrics. And so then it's very clear which ones are actually there currently or which ones we have to develop new. And I think we can probably put a general price tag on some of those things for sure.
Thank you. Well, I've let us get off track here, off schedule. So if you have additional questions, please send them to Chief Wilson and company, and they will address them. So now we get to move to the Tillamook campground conversion. Are you starting that, or does it go right to Joe? Hey, welcome.
Well, hey, all. I guess happy end of the morning here. Sorry I'm not there in person. Again, my name is Joe Offer. I'm the Recreation Education Interpretation Program Manager. And I'll say I came here to talk specifically about a campground conversion. Obviously, there's been a lot of discussion about recreation, so I'll try and tie some of that stuff in here. But if there's questions at the end, I can dive into that as well. But the main focus I came to talk about was a change of how we're collecting fees and some of the things we're doing on the Highway 6 corridor of the Tillamook State Forest. So this year we are moving the Browns Camp OHV campground to online reservations for the first time ever. This is part of a larger shift that we've gone through over the last 2-3 years. It's actually bring on more reservations in more of our campgrounds. So last year we went through and implemented reservations at all of our equestrian sites across the Tillamook, Clatsop, and San Em. Some of those already had equestrian reservations, but now moving that forward. And this year we're doing that at Browns Camp and continue to look forward into other facilities as I guess I'll just say capacity and capabilities change. A big shift is that we now have cell phone service on some of the Highway 6 corridor, so trying to adjust to that. And so I wanted to come talk about that briefly and just kind of share that update, see if there's any questions about that specifically. but also just share kind of why we did that and why we're looking at making those changes. And so the first thing I'll start off with is over the last 3 years, we've actually been running a reservation survey to try and get the feeling of our users, whether they were in favor of reservations, how they use the forest, what that might be. That was actually just done by essentially having QR codes on our informational boards in campgrounds and trailheads, along with on our website. And we actually saw a pretty substantial preference for reservations among our Equestrian users and OHV users. Obviously, that makes sense for a lot of reasons. You're loading up an OHV, you're loading up a horse, you want to make sure you have a site when you get there. So we're trying to be responsive to that need and that want. But additionally, it helps us with efficiency. Obviously, we are a pretty small staff across the entire area. And I'll mention that we have 18 FTE. 6 of those are covered by the OHV transfer fund, which I believe Paul Fournier mentioned a little bit ago. What that does is actually cover some of the fees associated with OHV work. But the other folks, it's not a big staff to be covering 3 state forests. And so by trying to get to reservations, it gives us a chance to have better tracking, better accountability for all of those numbers, and then also free up some of our time to be providing better maintenance and education in the forest for users. So the last thing there that I'll mention before maybe opening up, see if there's any questions, is that tracking piece. One thing that's very important to us is just understanding who's using the forest, where they're coming from, how many people might be with them. And I think I'm guilty of this. If I pull into a campground that has a paper fee, I'm more than likely just going to write my name on it and dump that in a box. But that's not providing where I may be coming from. It doesn't provide how many people might be at the campground. And because of that, that certainly impacts our numbers as far as understanding who's in the forest, who's using recreational facilities, and everything along those lines. So, in an effort to try and keep us on time, the only other piece that I'll mention along with that, I was going to talk about Brown's Camp, but additionally, we're doing similar work in other campgrounds, and large in the OHV side of our world. Our campgrounds were generally built just kind of out of happenstance in some ways, just kind of that's where facilities were in the past, where people access the forest. And with that, maybe not the most efficient, I guess, for campground management. And so we're really trying to take steps to increase campground size, make sure that we have the facilities that make sense where they're at. And so a good example of that is Diamond Mill OHV staging area. This year, we're also changing that from a kind of you show up, you just pull in kind of wherever to actually putting in sites. And so what that does for us as well is it also increases our ability to bring in fees. We go from a $5 per night per vehicle fee to a standard $20 fee, which is what we have in all of our other campgrounds that are drive up sites. And so again, an additional change to really improve our efficiency and improve our funding opportunities as well. So with that, that's what I have about the Tillamook conversions. And I definitely have some other pieces I could share about some of the questions asked earlier, but I'll stop here and see if anyone has questions about that. Yeah, Paul.
Hey, I just wanted to publicly thank you guys. I appreciate our relationship with our local ODF office. I know that sometimes there's some contentious stuff we talk about here. But I just want to say that locally, we, County Commission here in our county, really appreciates our relationship with you guys. I appreciate you wanting to track those numbers, the recreation numbers for our TLT. That's really helpful to us. And I think we're great partners and I want to continue that. So I just want to make sure that to leave that on a good note, that we're very happy with our relationship with our local office. So thank you.
Thank you. But one thing I do want to mention real quick, if this works to dive into as well, I do want to address that HCP question you had earlier. And we actually, and I think this is really important to mention here, the HCP does not limit our ability to develop campgrounds in HCAs. And it actually doesn't limit our ability to develop trails additionally too. It just puts caps on the overall number that we can put in. But the buffer that we built into the HCA into the HCP does allow for a significant amount of development if we were to go that direction, if that's something we could do. And same thing with trails as well. It's a net increase, net decrease. And so certainly something we're thinking about as we make decisions in the future about, what's the best place to put a trail. Does it serve a bigger part of the system? Or is it something that people actually enjoy and bring more people out? I know it's something you mentioned earlier, Paul, about making sure we had more people if we were going to actually expand. So again, making sure those opportunities are what people are looking for.
Well, I appreciate that. So we'll have to talk about Milepost 13, Demolay Park. Maybe we can collaborate and build I already have a plan for that campground that was developed 25 years ago. So maybe we can collaborate and partner on that.
Sounds great. It'd be great to join in the woods. Commissioner Banks.
Just for a point of clarification, recreation does have to follow the HCP, correct?
Correct. Yep. But in the HCP, the stipulations around some of the recreational pieces, just want to clarify for the previous question, it does not restrict completely. It just sets limitations on how we would do that. You know, setbacks from streams primarily, that's the biggest one for facilities, and trails as well. So a lot of those pieces that we have to work with them.
And standing water and water passage and slope and all of those things, correct?
Yep, best management practices for trails. So it's a big increase on what we're working through, and that's a big impact on our workload as well. So looking back on the current inventory of what we have for trails and facilities and making sure we bring that up to the best management practices that we're committing to, which we will be doing over the next 5 years, 10 years, and 20 years are the periods where we'll be working.
Okay. I'm just curious. I've seen some things on the interwebs lately that have caused some concern. And so, yeah. And will that include potentially delisting trail if it doesn't fall under,
Yeah,
excellent.
yep, absolutely. Vacating trails. That's one of the big things that we're working through is just identifying. We have this big system, right? And a lot of the trails obviously are historical. And so as we move forward with these new restrictions and changes, it's making a holistic approach to understand what does work, what doesn't work. And certainly I would be lying if I said every trail that we have right now is great. But I think the majority are, but making sure we get to that point where the vast majority are great trails for every purpose. Awesome.
Other questions? Or you have more for us?
No, I was going to say, sorry, Margaret, if there's any, I was just going to say if there's any other questions, happy to take them. But if not, happy to answer any questions if anyone has any offline. I'm always available. So that's what I got.
Thank you. Look forward to success with your online reservations.
Thank you. We hope so too. Thank you very much.
Cool. No questions. All right. Well, so upcoming meetings.
I'm happy to take that one.
Thank you.
Commissioner Magruder. We have 2 additional meetings on the docket as of right now. One is in May, currently scheduled for May 22nd, and then one in August, currently scheduled for August 21st. Entirely possible as things come up like we have done in the past to have additional meetings added in. I'll be staying in close contact with Mike and his team to get those if we need to have additional ones scheduled. But those are the next 2, one in May and one in August. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And any of you who have board members who have comments need to get information and be sure and contact Brandon so that you can get your thoughts shared. Chief Wilson, anything?
Nothing else from staff. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, we look forward to March 2nd and Casey's inauguration as the state forester, and we'll look forward to meeting with her and working with her, and all of you, as always. You're a great group to work with, and we appreciate having you on board and cooperating with us. Thank you. We will adjourn.
Have a great week.